Eli. Hi, Vinny. Grandma's gonna try to do more of Chapter 9, Further Adventures of Toad. Or actually, Chapter 10, excuse me. So, remember, we were with Mr. Toad, and he was just running away from the washerwoman. So let's go where we're at. He had traveled some miles, his horse and he was feeling drowsy in the hot sunshine, when the horse stopped, lowered its head, and began to nibble the grass. And Toad, waking up, just saved himself from falling off by an effort. He looked about him and found he was on a wide common dotted with patches of gorse and bramble as far as he could see. Remember, bramble is that stuff that you don't like to step on in the grass, baby. It has those thorns. Okay, where were we? Near him stood a dingy gypsy caravan, and beside it a man was sitting on a bucket turned upside down, very busy smoking and staring into the wide world. A fire of sticks was burning nearby, and over the fire hung an iron pot, and out of the pot came forth bubbling and gurglings and a vague suggestive steaminess. Also smells, warm, rich, and varied smells that twined and twisted and wreathed themselves at last into one complete, voluptuous, perfect smell that seemed like the very soul of nature taking form and appearing to her children, a true goddess, a mother of solace and comfort. Toad now knew well that he had not been really hungry before. What he had felt earlier in the day had been a mere trifling qualm. This was the real thing at last, and no mistake. It would have to be dealt with speedily, too, or there would be trouble for somebody or something. He looked the gypsy over carefully, wondering vaguely whether it would be easy to fight him or cajole him. So there he sat and sniffed and looked at the gypsy, and the gypsy sat and smoked and looked at him. Presently the gypsy took his pipe out of his mouth and remarked in a careless way, "Want to sell that there horse of yours?" Toad was completely taken aback. He did not know that gypsies were very fond of horse dealing and never missed an opportunity, and he had not reflected that caravans were always on the move and took a deal of drawing. It had not occurred to him to turn the horse into cash, but the gypsy's suggestion seemed to smooth the way towards the two things he wanted so badly: ready money and a solid breakfast. "What?" he said. "Me sell this beautiful young horse of mine? Oh, no, it's out of the question. Who's going to take the washing home to my customers every week? Besides, I'm too fond of him, and he simply dotes on me." "Try and love a donkey," suggested the gypsy. "Some people do." "You don't seem to see," continued Toad, "that this fine horse of mine is a cut above you altogether. He's a blood horse. He is partly, not the part you see, of course, another part. And he's been a prize hackney, too, in his time. That was the time before you knew him. But you can still tell on him at a glance if you understood anything about horses." "No, it is not a thought of for the moment. All the same, how much might you dispose to offer me for this beautiful young horse of mine?" The gypsy looked at the horse over, and then he looked Toad over with equal care, and looked at the horse again. "Shillings a leg," he said briefly, and turned away, continuing to smoke and try to stare the wide world out of countenance. "A shilling a leg?" cried Toad. "If you please, I must take a little time to work that out, and see just what comes to." He climbed down off the horse and left it to graze, and sat down by the gypsy and did sums on his fingers, and at last he said, "A shilling a leg? Why, that comes to exactly 4 shillings and no more. Oh no, I could not think of accepting 4 shillings for this beautiful young horse of mine." "Well," said the gypsy, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make it 5 shillings, and that's 3 and 6 pence more than the animal's worth, and that's my last word." Then Toad sat and pondered long and deeply, for he was hungry and quite penniless, and still some way, he knew not how far, from home, and enemies might still be looking for him. To one in such a situation, 5 shillings may very well appear a large sum of money. On the other hand, it did not seem very good to get for a horse. But then again, the horse didn't cost him anything, so whatever he got was all clear profit. At last he said firmly, "Look here, Gypsy, I tell you what we'll do, and this is my last word. You shall hand me over 6 shillings and 6 pence, cash down, and further in addition thereto, you shall give me as much breakfast as I can possibly eat, at one sitting, of course, out of the iron pot of yours that keeps sending forth such delicious and exciting smells. In return, I will make over to you your spirited young horse, with all the beautiful harnesses and trappings that you have on him, freely thrown in. It's that not good enough for you? Say so, and I'll get going on. I know a man near here who's wanting this horse of mine for years." The gypsy grumbled frightfully and declared if he did a few more deals of that sort, he'd be ruined. But in the end, he lugged a dirty canvas bag out of the depths of his trouser pocket and counted out 6 shillings and a 6 pence into Toad's paw. When he disappeared into the caravan for an instant and returned with a large iron plate and a knife, fork, and a spoon, he tilted up the pot, and a glorious stream of hot rich stew gurgled into the plate. It was indeed the most beautiful stew in the world, being made of partridges and pheasants and chickens and hares and rabbits and peahens and guinea fowls and 1 or 2 other things. Toad took the plate on his lap, almost crying, and stuffed and stuffed and stuffed, and kept asking for more, and the gypsy never grudged him. He thought that he had never eaten so good a breakfast in all his life. See, there he is. When Toad had taken as much stew on board as he thought he could possibly hold, he got up and said goodbye to the gypsy, and took an affectionate farewell of the horse. And the gypsy, who knew the riverside well, gave him directions which way to go, and he set forth his travels, again in the best possible spirits. He was indeed a very different Toad from the animal an hour ago. The sun was shining brightly. His wet clothes were quite dry again. He had money in his pocket once more. He was nearing home and friends and safety. And most best of all, he had a substantial meal, hot and nourishing, and felt big and strong and careless and self-confident. As he trampled along gaily, he thought of his adventures and escapes, and how when things seemed at their worst, he had always managed to find a way out, and his pride and his conceit began to swell within him. "Ho, ho," he said to himself as he marched along with his chin in the air. "What a clever Toad I am! There is surely no animal equal to me for the cleverness in the whole world. My enemies shut me up in prison, encircled by sentries, watched night and day by wardens. I walk out through them all by sheer ability coupled with courage. They pursue me with engines and policemen and revolvers. I snap my fingers at them and vanish laughing into space. I am, unfortunately, thrown into a canal by a fat woman and a very evil mind. What of it? I swim ashore, I seize her horse, I ride off in triumph, and I sell the horse for a whole pocketful of money and an excellent breakfast. Ho, ho, I am the Toad, the handsome, the popular, the successful Toad." He got so puffed up with conceit that he made up a song as he walked in praise of himself, and sang it at the top of his voice. Though there was no one to hear it but him, it was perhaps the most conceited song for an animal ever composed. Okay, let's read the song, baby. "The world has held great heroes, as history books have showed, but never a name to go down into fame compared with that to Toad. The clever men of Oxford know all there is to be known, but they none of them know 1/2 as much as intelligent Mr. Toad. The animals sat in the ark and cried, their tears in torrents flowed. Who was it? It said, 'There's land ahead,' encouraging Mr. Toad. The army all saluted as they marched along the road. Was it the king or Kitchener? No, it was Mr. Toad. The queen and the ladies in waiting sat at the window and sewed. She cried, 'Look, who's that handsome man?' They answered, 'Mr. Toad.'" There was a great deal more of the same sort, but too dreadfully conceited to be written down. These are some of the milder verses. He sang as he walked as he sang, and got more inflated every minute. But his pride was shortly to have a severe fall. After some miles of country lanes, he reached the high road. As he had turned into and glanced along its white length, he saw approaching with a speck that turned into a dot, and then turned into a blob, and then to something very familiar. And a double note of warning, only too well known, fell on his delighted ear. "This is something like," said the excited Toad. "This is real life again. This is once more the great world from which I have missed so long. I will hail them, my brothers of the wheel, and pitch them a yarn of sort that was been so successful hereunto, and they will give me a lift, of course. And then I will walk to them some more, and perhaps with luck, it may even end up driving up to Toad Hill in a motor car. That will be one for the eye for Badger." I think this is a good time for us to stop. And then tomorrow we will continue. And I think we'll be able to finish the chapter. See, remember, there's the washerwoman and Mr. Toad dressed as a washerwoman. Okay. I love you, sweetheart. Mwah!